Hello, my name is Lawrence Mills, Chairman of the Trustees of the Dormansland War Memorial Hall. I took over the role on 1st February 2018, and it has come to my attention that since that time the composition of the village has moved on. And I think it's time I gave a full update to all current residents via a presentation of this nature. Given the prevailing circumstances we find ourselves experiencing, although hopefully change is just around the corner, I'm using technology, although I would always prefer to stand in front of a meeting, but for now COVID does not allow. I feel it necessary not just for that reason, but because recent heightened interest in the fate of the hall has led to some amazingly inaccurate speculation, false information, and unfounded criticism of the way this matter is proceeding. In the interest of both myself and my fellow trustees, it is time to end that speculation. I'm going to give a three-part presentation, starting with the history, moving on to the present, and concluding with our future visions. So I hope you will take the time to listen carefully to this presentation, and it will both clarify and excite. And so I shall commence with part one, the history. The land and building was first bequeathed to the village to respect the fallen and those who served in the Great War. Its legacy was extended after the Second World War to honour those who served and died. And later, the building was extended during the 1960s to what you see today. For many years, it served a great purpose in the village, hosting many social events, dances, community, clubs, as well as providing a lively, everyday social atmosphere. I personally have been a member for 24 years, and in the early part of those years, I can vouch for how busy it was at various times in the week. However, with a lot of recreational facilities in the recent years, its popularity declined, and the world moved on around it. Pubs don't survive without food, often sports and games, and gone are the days when people went out expecting to leave at 11 in the evening or get home for Sunday lunch by 2:30 in the afternoon. Expectancy has changed. Life has changed, my friends. People require more versatility, more vibrancy, more variation in their social interaction, and such places as our hall cannot live by beer alone. Finances became tighter and tighter, and as an inevitable consequence, the building became the first victim. Maintenance became a chore and hardship, not assisted by the vast unwieldy layout of the present building. The appearance fell behind the times, not just outside, but inside. The whole facility lost its mojo, as they say these days. And despite the efforts of its matriarch, Anne Seymour, who was no mean leader, it fell away. Anne's efforts for all sorts of beneficial work were eventually rewarded with an MBE. Yet even she could not raise funding or grants despite her efforts over many years to revitalise the building. During the last 15 years of its existence, it closed twice. And only through the efforts of its members and loans from its members and grants from the parish council was it able to reopen. It is a great shame that then no social media existed to expose this plight to the residents as a whole. Perhaps the outcome may have been different. Perhaps it could have once again enjoyed the support of those who had abandoned it. But no one really cared. No one supported, and no one was really in control after Anne's death. Those individuals who did give their time in an attempt to keep it open on reduced hours tried by offering for sale a portion of the land which they thought may raise sufficient funds to renovate it. And this is a subject to which I will return in more detail during part 3. However, they did not have a properly elected or legal structure to engage in this sale, and imminent closure was looming. The parish council set out to rectify the status by calling a public meeting in line with the trust deed to appoint new trustees. This was advertised fully in accordance with all protocols, and this can be checked as a matter of record. At this meeting, anyone resident in the village was called upon to stand up with their plans for the hall should they be elected. Now, it should be remembered that if no one had stood up at this meeting, the ultimate position was for the land to go to the Charities Commission, where it would have been sold for redevelopment. Some of the money perhaps going back to the village for distribution on community projects. The legacy would have been lost, not just the generosity of those who gave the land for the men of Dormansland that had died, and for those who still carried the scars of battle, both mental and physical. But a snub to the whole generation of people countrywide who gave their lives for the freedom that every single one of us enjoys to this day. Maybe Dormansland is some corner of an English field, but for a wealthy community to discard its legacy in such a selfish and casual manner belies that very legacy of not just this village, but the efforts of a whole country. On February 1st, 2018, I stood up and spoke to less than 100 people who bothered to show up, and told them my visions and how we could rebuild by either moving or selling, and all the reasons why. Furthermore, I made it clear that if they voted for me, that is what they were voting for. This was quite unequivocal. I was joined by my fellow trustees who supported my initiatives and was duly elected by well over 90% of the attendees. So that is how I come to be here, and I look forward in part 2 to discussing what has happened since my election, the decisions we have made, the reasons for those decisions, the consequences, and exactly where we are at in the process. For those interested further in the historicity of the hall, the trustees have appointed Mr. Gary Steer, a local historian, as a historical consultant. In the future, he will be able to help with answering some questions some residents may have. Please join me again for part 2 of this presentation.